Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, to secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Night Vision. Glad you could join us tonight. We got a great show planned tonight. The first hour, we're going to be covering the subject of ghosts of World War I. That was a topic that was suggested by my esteemed colleague and night vision historian, James Martin. Second hour, we're going to be talking about life after death, in which I hope to be a continuing subject that we're going to be covering, because I know what happens after we leave this plane is important to everyone. It's a subject that no one can avoid and affects everyone. So in that second hour, we're going to be exploring NDE's life after death with two actual near-death experiencers. So it's going to be quite a show tonight. Last week we just celebrated Veterans Day, and I think that sort of put a bug in James's ear about the war, and he started thinking about it and brought up the topic that there were so many reports from soldiers in World War I about their paranormal experiences. We often hear stories about people seeing ghostly battalions walking across an old battlefield long after, maybe even centuries after the fighting has stopped. And we hear about all these soldiers still occupying the spaces where they met their deaths or where they fought. And I think there's something about a battlefield that seems to leave behind some kind of residual presence or energy or image. And perhaps it's the level of stress that the fighters are going through, the emotions and trauma that make an imprint in that area. But in World War I, more than any other conflict, the reports of returning soldiers and also the diaries of those who didn't make it are full of stories about these unearthly encounters that they experienced in and around the battlefields. So I would like to introduce my partner here, James Martin, our historian, and he is going to share some of the things that he's been researching and found about World War I and the paranormal. Plus, he's going to give us a little bit of context. So we're going to learn something, learn a little history, and we're also going to hear some very, very interesting stories that you may not have heard before. Hey, James.
Hey, everyone. I hope you're well. Thanks for having me back on. Yes, so it was, Veterans Day. We call it Armistice Day in Europe, and it just felt appropriate to talk about World War One. And what it was that was going on there, and I think it's one of those conflicts that it's I don't know. I always feel it's one of the ignored conflicts that occurred in Europe, and I know that in the States, it's perhaps not as well understood maybe as World War II. So I just thought I'd give you a bit of context as to what was going on, and really how it was the US got involved, and then we'll talk about some of the paranormal things that were occurring perhaps in the trenches. So, I mean, just to start us off, really, World War One comes about because of lots of alliances and generally imperialism. You've got Germany, who's in alliance with Austria, Austria-Hungary as it was then, Bulgaria and Turkey. And for those who are watching the show, you can see a map of how Europe was in 1914. On the other side, you've got France, Russia, and Great Britain in an alliance. And Britain has said that it's not involved, or doesn't want to be involved in any conflict across Europe, but it will protect Belgium. And as such, when Belgium is invaded by Germany, really that's the trigger. Back in 1914, the late summer of that year, the main powers in Europe and indeed across the world begin to fight with each other. In 1914, there's a rapid advance from Germany through the borders of Belgium, and it looks like Germany is about to occupy Paris. That doesn't happen. They're outflanked by Britain and France, and there is essentially a stalemate. Two armies. You've got the British Expeditionary Force, the French army. What's left of the Belgian army, who begin to clash, and there really isn't any movement. This is what we know as trench warfare. And again, for those who are watching, I've just put up an image of each of the trenches that were established in Europe. Just for context, the trenches ran from the Swiss border. Switzerland was a neutral country, right the way through to the North Sea. Hundreds of miles of trenches where on both sides, on the German side, the French, British side, they're entrenched. I mean, we really are just talking about holes in the ground that eventually begin to link together, forming the trench. They're really close quarters. So you can see that on the British side, let's say, you maybe 2 or 3 meters, as close as that in some areas, from the German lines. You can hear what the enemy's doing, what they're saying. You can't lift your head above the trench for worry that you might end up being shot at by either side. And nobody believes at the outbreak of the First World War. In fact, one of the reasons why the US doesn't go into the conflict straight away is because everyone thinks that this conflict will be done by Christmas. Now, the war starts off with a traditional war. By that I mean it's naval and land. The idea of air warfare isn't around in 1914, although that does change with the German Zeppelins later on in the war. So that's really a little bit of context. Nobody thinks it's going to be finished. Now, to put it in a without as being as gruesome as I could describe, nobody has seen this sort of conflict. As I say, it starts off with entrenched positions, but really by the end of 1914, you've got hundreds of thousands of people who have been mowed down. This is industrial warfare. And as I say, with the Germany develops airships, the famous Zeppelins, who are bombing London later on in the war. People are seeing for the first time things in the sky that could be a danger. And so I think in a little bit we'll talk about some of the unexplained things in the sky that people were talking about. But for the time being, as I say, in terms of the context of it all, two forces are opposing each other, and just imagine what that's like. it's dark, it's damp, you can hear your enemy. And that's the same that is true for hundreds of miles. The terror that people must have gone through is extreme. And as Renee was just saying at the top of the show there, what it is about war other than the death, and one of the things that I think that links to certainly some of the paranormal ideas within World War One is people aren't moving. There's a concentration of very scared, often underage kids, 14, 13-year-olds who are in trenches, and the only way to try and move those frontiers is by going over the top, as it were. That is to say, climbing over, you would hear a whistle, you would climb over, and then you would be met by machine gun fire from the other side. It is truly, truly a terrifying experience. And for those who ever want to go to Europe, visiting some of the existing trenches, you'll notice it's an area with no shadows. There's no bird song. It is truly a dead area. If that gives us a bit of context, Renee.
Trying to come back. Here I am. I disappeared so that you could tell your story, but also I just had an incredible coughing fit. So if anyone, I don't know if anybody heard me before I cut my mic, but I think I've got myself together now. Anyhow, yeah, that's a great context for the way things work. Now, this war, I know we're going to be talking about the paranormal aspects that were going on then. So what about this war made it different than other wars that made it so rife with these contacts and these experiences?
Well,
why would it be? Sorry.
It's really the first time that you can see an industrial scale conflict. So what we're talking about here is entire economies are being re-geared for the production of armaments. Soldiers across the European empires are being drawn from Canada, India, Australia, New Zealand, Africa. It's certainly a very multicultural conflict, but it's really a pointless one in many ways. There was an arms race that was going on just before the outbreak of war. So there were major increases in military expenditure. There was a naval race between Germany and Britain. Britain was producing warships, dreadnoughts, as they would become to be known. Germany was doing the same. But in context, the United States doesn't have much of a navy. It doesn't have much of an armed force at this stage. About 300,000 troops in the US. I know that must sound unusual to hear for you guys in the United States, but the US hasn't industrialized warfare at this stage. So this is seen in the US as being another European conflict. Nobody believes it's going to be particularly long conflict. Germany looks certainly like it's going to win initially. But as the years go on, the US finds itself in a bit of a predicament. For most of the United States have heritage from Europe. Most of the citizens of the US have heritage from Europe. So there's conflicts of interest between German immigrants, for example, British and Irish, etc. What is the United States to do? And so, yes, you've got this trench warfare in Europe, and you have this appalling loss of life. Living conditions, for example, you enlist or you're drafted into the army, and you're given really basic training. You're then sent to a front, and this is what you would have seen. The German trenches eventually made of concrete and a little bit cleaner than the British and French side, but these are literally muddy holes in the ground. There are rats, there are bodies piled up. Between two trenches, you have what's called no man's land. And this is just quite simply a wasteland of death. There are bodies in no man's land, and just a few meters away, you're there with your head down in the trench. There's rats, there's water and sludge and mud everywhere, leading to health conditions, so-called trench foot, where your extremities begin to rot and things like that. Excuse me.
That reminds me of the poem that you read to me earlier. Would you want to share that on the air?
Yeah, perhaps just the last stanza, or do you think it would be worthwhile reading it all?
Well, I think in order to grasp the fullness of the last part of it, I think you need to hear what's gone before. It's a very bleak poem about war, and people always glorify war, but certainly the poetry that was coming out at that time was not glorifying war. It was telling it like it was.
Just for context, there was this notion that going to war was a valiant and honourable thing. When you're in trenches with basic rations, mud, no movement, how do you keep yourself entertained? Now, we do know this is really one of the first wars where we end up with media. So we do have war correspondents, we have photos, we have all of this.
We have a question from the chat room. I don't know if you saw it, about that very thing. Charles asks, how much did photography change the face of war in Europe?
Well, massively. I'm going to show you an image from the London Illustrated Press a little bit later in the show. It really does change things because newspapers start to use photographs in their print. I'm not suggesting they hadn't done beforehand, but the absolute magnitude of this conflict. The other thing I just want to say before I read the poem is both sides start developing poison attacks, gas attacks, mustard gas, for example. So, you've then got this distribution of these masks that people are wearing. I've wore one myself. It is next to impossible to breathe. But the consequences, if you breathe some of this gas, is your lungs turn into froth and all sorts of other things, incredibly deadly. So this poem is called Dulce Edicorum Est, to do for one's country, effectively. And it's written by Wilfred Owen. And it goes like this. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge. Till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on bloodshod, all went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas! Quick, boys, an ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in firewall line. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If, in some smothering dreams, you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. If you could hear, at every jolt, the blood come gargling from froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as could, of vile, incurable sores, on innocent tongues. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce decorum est, pro patria mori.
Which means
to do and die for one's country.
And die for one's country.
That's really is one of the key things about this conflict. This is a brand new type of war. This is industrial death. Now, I'm certainly not taking anything away from World War II, but if you imagine all across borders, it is the same story repeated. Hundreds of thousands of people are killed within any attempt to move. It's not just on land, though, by sea. Britain has mined the coast of Germany and has all of the coast of Germany under a naval blockade, the idea being to starve people out. And again, for those watching, there's a naval chart here that you can see, just showing you the extent of the British blockade. Germany begins to develop submarines. I've got that cough now, Renee. But
no.
Submarines.
It's contagious.
Some of the gases that we used, it might be.
That's right. Maybe weird. I know, it was the weirdest thing. It just came on to me so fast. But yeah, these senseless wars, and we just keep doing it. The human race keeps starting these wars. And I mean, there are so many parallels in each of these situations, to things that are going on today. It's just unbelievable that, I mean, just as though you said, they thought we'd be out by Christmas, well, the war in Ukraine was supposed to last about a week, and here we are, 8 months later, and it's still raging worse than ever. And it's like, there is a glory and there is something to be proud of, to, fight for your people, fight for your country, to protect. But when you're on the ground, I'm sure it doesn't feel all that glorious, as evidenced by that poem.
And this is the real
must
change.
Be very ugly on the ground.
This is the real change. So if you, World War II is certainly about the defense of democracy against militarism, fascism. World War I starts off with a conflict that is just about glory and the flag and countries and empire. What begins to change, though, is that glory becomes a conflict that no one knows how it's going to end. It's stalemate for years and years. You have, I'm going to talk about the graveyards and what people were seeing in the trenches, but it should be worthwhile. It should be worthwhile noting that a lot of those graveyards aren't on land; they're at sea. In 1915, for example, there's a liner, the SS Lusitania, or RMS Lusitania, that sank by a German U-boat, a submarine. Incredible loss of life. And by 1917, for example, Germany has declared unrestricted warfare, submarine warfare. It is sinking US freighters, US ships that are trading with Britain and Europe. It sees that the only way to counter the British blockade, for example, is by getting rid of the foodstuffs, etc., and whatever you go into Europe. Countless people who weren't involved in the conflict who met a watery grave, and I know second hour, there's a bit of a theme with that. But we've got to remember this. And just before we get on to the some of the stories and what have you, it's absolutely heartbreaking. I don't think we today can understand, or in any way, shape, or form, the horrors that these people went through. It's absolutely appalling, and it's really, it's such a shame because not just war, there were pointless wars, and there were those wars that are regrettably needed, defense of democracy, things like that. But this one is really about kings and emperors playing with their toys as they see it. Whilst you're on the front line, the general, somewhat 30 miles to the rear of you, swilling champagne and moving imaginary soldiers around. There are pictures of that. But one of the key things, other than the unrestricted warfare that did bring the United States into the conflict, is called the Zimmerman telegram. And I know we've been talking just before the show about this. For those watching the show, you can see the original telegram here. It is coded, but I'll decode it for you. What it says in a nutshell is the German Foreign Ministry is in talks with the Mexican government that's in civil war at this point, asking it whether or not it will join the conflict to stop the United States getting involved and sending troops over to Europe to support the war effort. As I say, the US has a very small military at this stage. And if Mexico does this, they will receive, the following territories. So if Mexico invades the United States, they will be given the states of, here's my geography, Texas, I think we've got Arizona and Nevada there, is that right? Either way, so it's quite a large territory that's offered if the United States is distracted by a border conflict. The US reacts, as you can imagine, and begins its preparation for a declaration of war on Germany, which then saw US troops facing the horror that European soldiers were facing. So I hope that that sort of gives you a bit of a preamble as to what it was that was going on. And as I say, New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. Thank you, Charles. Geography, it's very early in the morning here, so I think 2 out of 3 is not too bad. And of course, the Mexican government, when they're offered this treaty, this engagement, seriously considers it, which is absolutely shocking. And again, it is one of those stories that I don't think many people understand. But if you're wanting to read more, it's called the Zimmerman telegram. So yes, as I say, you also have the advent of aerial warfare. So for the first time, people are seeing things in the sky, and in London especially, London was bombed from the sky by Zeppelins, and there's this image. It isn't a real image if you're watching this, but it does give you an idea as to what people were seeing in the sky. These huge, slow-moving flying cigars in the sky that were dropping bombs. And how are they being shot down? Well, there isn't anything much by way of what we would understand as fighter craft. There are, and as we'll talk about, there are some very crude by today's standards military aircraft, but these things are slow moving and you can hear them, and they're bombing from the sky. And the reason I call them cigars, Renee, just to
Yeah.
go for it, the French term for UFO, by the way, is cigar volant, the flying
Really?
cigars. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. I did not know that. It's funny because I was just getting ready to say, we never heard about that Zimmerman telegram uh, in school, and then just as I was getting ready to say that, excuse me, the chat room said the same thing. Mary Beth and Kathy, we never heard that. I guess I know why, because it didn't look nearly as nice as us rushing off to save our allies. You know, when I guess we were like just saving our own butts. Pardon the expression. Also
Well,
French.
yeah, I'll translate. But yeah, the scars of that conflict are real, and it's not normal for me to talk about the paranormal before history. Hence the reason I've given a bit of a preamble. But having visited the trenches when I was at college means something slightly different in the UK than it does in the US at college. But I was about 17 and studying history. And I took a picture before the days of smartphones of the sun shining through the trees. It was so beautiful. I remember seeing it. And again, for those watching, I've just put up a scan of it. It's not particularly great quality. And then when I had it developed, I began to notice something that I genuinely hadn't seen. And those were the little mounds at the foot of trees that are craters. The extent of this conflict saw villages wiped off the map. Fleury Dumont, for example, completely and utterly wiped off the face of this planet. So much is the extent of loss of life. Villages had lost 50 to 100% of their menfolk. It did have another effect, which in Europe meant that women were, for the first time at least, be able to work in factories and actually earn and all of this. But, that's the extent of the loss of life. And it was truly, truly appalling. So, things in the sky. One of the most famous accounts from the front line, and I have to say, unfortunately, it's likely that this story comes from a bit of creative writing from someone in a trench. And I'm referring to the Angel of Mons. Now, just for context, Germany's rapidly advancing into France, but it's then met at what's called the Battle of the Frontiers by the French and British Army, and they're pushing back. I think only then did people really begin to see that this conflict isn't going to be over by Christmas, and it's going to be truly appalling. It doesn't matter too much whether or not this story is a work of fiction. What it does do is tell you what people are believing. So the London Illustrated Press, this is from, the same newspaper that was drawing lots of impressions of who Jack the Ripper was back in 1888. But they have put a depiction of what people were seeing, or allegedly seeing, as the myth goes. And that was archers who were in no man's land, firing towards...
For you Americans that are listening, he's not saying arches, he's saying archers. They just don't believe in ours in Great Britain. Okay, carry on.
I could say something about herbs, but anyway. Yeah, okay, archery, if that makes sense. Yeah. So both now it's an office.
I only said
So
that because you mentioned it to me for the first time. I thought you were saying arches, arches. So they sound exactly the same when you say them. Sorry. Forgive me. I know not what I do.
so yeah, you've got the, like I say, this is the Battle of Mons, and you can imagine all of this retreat, morale's at an all-time low. And, you know, it's less than a month after the outbreak of war. This is the 23rd of August of 1914. And Germany's on the advance, and the British forces offering a resistance in these very muddy fields in Mons, which is found in Belgium. And all hope looks lost. All hope looks gone. Sorry. However, the legend goes that soldiers began to pray, and their prayers were answered by a ghostly form, which had descended from the heavens, hence the term angel in this way. They were firing arrows or, whatever it was, towards the German lines, and the German horses, the German cavalry, was spooked, enabling the British to make an orderly retreat. And that's the idea. But the public read this as a fact, despite the fact that its first illustration in a newspaper had said, "Oh, this is a short story." But the public believed it. People on the front lines believed it. I've seen diaries explaining, can we have another intervention like this to get us out of this sheer misery? But just to answer a question, why did America have so few soldiers in the Civil War? The reason for it, the United States hadn't been involved in international conflicts, was looking at its own expansion internally from sea to shining sea. The mantra at the outbreak of the First World War, so this is for Mary Beth, at the outbreak of the First World War, who wants to get entangled with a foreign conflict in a faraway land? That's the notion. And I think it was Darlington Smedley Butler. No, he wasn't British. He was an American general. Was certainly arguing we shouldn't be getting involved in these far-flung conflicts. Now, whether or not that's true, that's what historians say. I do have to point out a flaw in that argument, which is, well, you guys did take over the Philippines and Cuba and all of this, but the idea was we're not getting entangled in European politics, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was the Angel of Mons. Now, there's another story here, which is from the front line, which involves a Canadian, later would be an author, called Corporal William Byrd. I don't know if is he a known figure in the US?
Not that much. I don't think so. I mean, maybe to real historians and history buffs, he might be, but he's not a name that I recall hearing bandied about.
Well, he's part of the 42nd Battalion of the Canadian Black Watch, and he is asleep in a dugout on a very cold floor in a place called Vimy Ridge, northern France. And just before dawn, his story goes, he's 26 years old, cold. He's on a different continent. He's from Nova Scotia originally. And he felt two warm hands on his back. And when he opens his eyes, expecting to see one of his comrades, he doesn't. He sees the image, or he sees the apparition of his dead brother, Steve Bird. Now, his brother had been killed 2 years before in France. I think that was by machine gun fire. But the apparition didn't speak to him, just gazed into William Bird's eyes, and then walked from this dugout, sort of beckoning his brother to follow. So Bird follows, as you would, oh my God, my brother's back. I think we would all do that and try and follow and where are you going kind of thing. Anyway, he does. He follows, and this is from his diaries. I'm just paraphrasing what he had to say. So he continued to follow his brother to the ruins of a house at the towards the end of a trench in the rear that had been completely and utterly bombed out. Before he had the chance to call out for his brother when he got to the this bombed out house, he's then overcome with absolute grief, torment, as his brother disappears. He collapses and he says, he cried himself to sleep and lost consciousness. He wakes up a few hours later, not knowing what time it is, trying to figure out what it was that was going on, and returns back to his bunker. However, his bunker is now one big, giant crater.
His brother saved his life.
His brother saved his life. An enemy shell had slammed into the trench, killing absolutely everyone inside. Now, wow. He then survived the war, became a journalist, author, and told some of his stories from that conflict. But it's really not an unusual story. There are so many, for example, in Lancashire, in northern England, where you had platoons of people who were called the Lads, Lads. So the Lads Brigades, things like this. And these were people who went to school with each other, who were in the same year with each other, who would be shipped off to the trenches in France, and barely anyone would return.
Come back, right?
Mothers were writing in diaries, and I think we were saying this the other day, Renee. Diaries are absolutely crucial for the understanding of history, but don't make any mistake, we're not meant to read them. These are private thoughts for people. It's not for publication. These are, if you've ever written an email and then you've been angry and you've written an email or something like that, and you've thought, I'm not going to send it. I suppose that's the modern version of what I'm talking about. Right, but these diaries, right. Mothers would be absolutely jubilant to see their son back. They would open the door, they would sit down and have meals and talk to them, only for the next day. Mary Blackwell's diary, for example. I had supper with my son, but just the next day, received confirmation that he'd been shot and killed in the conflict. Wow. This, it really is the supernatural war, because people, you've got that Victorian belief in the afterlife and all of this, but on both sides as well. Unfortunately, I have been a little bit Britain, France, US friendly, but the same is happening in Germany too. There's something about this conflict that's different. It's a real step change. And for those people who are interested in UFOs and all of this, a shout out to you, because speaking of Lancashire, the Chief Constable of Lancashire reports seeing a large red light. This is 1914. A large red light seen at 8:45 p.m. today, passing over Runcorn Bridge arches. That's not archers, arches like a bridge arch.
So I told you it sounded exactly the same.
And the curious thing about this is shortly after, an explosion's then heard in Widnes, which is a town near Runcorn. So people are beginning to see things in the heavens as well, and it's certainly not the first time in conflicts people have seen things in the skies. But as I was saying before, you've got this very rudimentary fighter craft. If you think it's bad in the trenches, I think I read that the life expectancy of early fighter craft biplanes was about 25 minutes. So as soon as you're up in the sky, that's about as long as you'll last before you're shot out of it.
Wow.
And the Germans have an ace up their sleeve. Don't know whether you will be familiar with the Red Baron.
Red Baron? Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We even had a song about it.
Oh, really? Yeah. Do you want to give us a rendition of it?
No. I don't want to have everybody tune out. We've still got another hour to go.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But, again, for context with this, you've got lots of stories about aliens and all of this. Anyway, you've got War of the Worlds that have been released not too far away from before the outbreak of war. Yep, Baron von Richthofen is his name. Kathy, yes. And it's claimed he was a baron, by the way, to give him his full title, Baron Manfred von Richthofen. And he claims that he had shot down a flying saucer-like craft. And not only that, he then reports seeing two inhabitants from this craft fleeing the scene. In fact, there was another pilot called Peter, I'm going to butcher this one, Peter Rattrick, who says that they saw what looked like an upside-down saucer. Quote, "We were terrified because we'd seen nothing like this ever before. The Baron had immediately opened fire and the thing went down like a rock, shearing off tree limbs as it crashed into the woods. There's no doubt in my mind the Baron shot down some sort of spacecraft from another planet, and those little guys who ran off to the woods were space aliens of some kind." Now, that quote comes from someone who's sharing the story 80 years later, but it does give you a bit of an idea. For the first time, you've got dogfights in the sky, these very slow-moving biplanes firing weapons, firing guns that are very crude at each other. You've got planes that are used for a bit of reconnaissance, but this is brand new. So people are seeing things in the sky, because you're frightened now. You've grew up knowing that the army and the navy are going to protect you. Now you've got to worry about things in the skies too. And there is absolute fear, especially when the Zeppelins start dropping their bombs. There's fear that we're going to get invaded from the heavens, etc., etc. So the number of UFO sightings massively increases to the point that MI5, previously known as MO5, by the way, begin what would become quite a lengthy investigation into UFOs. And I know that some files are still being released from this period. So yeah, you've got the full thing. The other quick story about UFOs during the First World War is to do with the seeing of lights in the sky. So there was guidance. We don't have enough time to go into this, but there was guidance that was set out from MI5 to categorize sightings of either natural origin or other origin. And that was left to the local police forces to make that determination. So, yeah, just all very, very interesting. Oh, sorry, Renee, I don't know if you're still with us.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to keep my mic muted as much as possible because I keep coughing, and I don't want to break everyone's eardrums. But yeah, there's some really interesting stories, obviously from World War One, but also from other wars. Very similar stories. I remember reading one about, in fact, it was the Vietnam War, where this guy, he was, here in the States, he was a construction worker, got off work one night, really super tired. And he's walking along and he's passing by as he walks down the street to get to his house. He passes by this funeral parlor and he notices this friend of his standing outside the funeral parlor. And he hadn't seen him in a long time. He was one of his childhood friends. But he said he was just so exhausted and so tired that he just kind of tucked his cap over his face and walked on by, because he said he just didn't feel like, rehashing old times at that time. And when he got home, his mother lived with his mother, I guess, and she was on the telephone when he got home, and she was getting word that that same friend had been killed in Vietnam and that his body had just been brought to that funeral home. And he saw him outside. He had no idea, that the guy had passed away. A lot of things like that seem to be. Well, I mean, people have a lot of those experiences anyway, but it does seem about wars. There's so much of an imprint made.
I think it's, if it was natural to kill each other, we wouldn't need to be trained in the armed forces, would we? As I was doing the research for this show, I mean, this was really bringing back quite a lot of things that I'd read anyway. Hence the reason I really wanted to put World War One on a bit more of a, can we remember these people? It's not just the aftermath of that conflict saw a explosion, pardon the pun, of attendance at spiritual churches, families who had lost entire generations. Still to this day, it's true across Lancashire, for example, and other places. There's an imbalance in population because of the conflict. People are trying to access the other world in order to contact their loved ones, because it's horrendous to think about this, but in Europe we have in most cities the sort of tomb of the unknown soldier. The amount of death in this conflict meant that unfortunately not everyone could be identified.
Yeah.
Which is just, imagine as a mother, a father, a grandma, whatever, not being able to have any closure on this. And people turn to spirituality. They turn to anything that they can get hold of to find out what happened. And to this day, still, people are looking for relatives, and all of that. But yeah, it's just to say, from a personal perspective, if you imagine 17-year-old college students, not exactly the quietest of bunches, and you anyone who's listening and they've heard me before know that I'm hardly a hushing violet or anything like that. But I can say for about 4 hours there was silence, and it was my first experience of no shadows. There was no shadows. It was sunny day. There was no bird song. It was absolutely silent. Nature knew what had gone on, and these are at Vimy Ridge and some of the Ypres, for example, these appalling conflict, these appalling battles, so much loss of life that nature itself reflects a bit of respect and trauma, I think, still to this day. So
yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, we've sort of run our course here already. I mean, there's so many stories. We've got a lot more stories that we could share, and we'll have to, do that again at another time, because it really is interesting. And also, I really like the fact that we are covering, sort of the forgotten war, the forgotten veterans. I mean, my grandfather was in World War One. I see someone in the chat room. Michael says he remembers his great grandfather telling him stories from World War One, where he fought with his 4 brothers, band of brothers. And I think it's good to remember and to be grateful for those people who, these soldiers on the ground, were literally fighting for our freedom. And
if we don't remember our history, we were doomed to repeat. History doesn't repeat itself. That's not true. But it certainly, the flavors of history repeat itself because we don't understand. We don't learn from our history. And that's the point. And I am not, if you get to know me, I'm not someone who enjoys, warfare or really talking about it. But for this one, that's
right. You really don't like talking about wars generally. I was kind of surprised that you brought up this topic. We're right at the end of this hour. Remember, we've got a whole nother hour coming up, very special hour. We're going to be talking about life after death with 2 near-death experiencers, and it's going to be really, really interesting. So I hope you'll stay with us, because we'll be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Scrolling all day, time can disappear. Wanna make it count? Why not volunteer?
Posting pics of your food, that takes up time. Time, you've got time to binge all of season 9, though it got so bad.
Time, you got time. We're gonna grow back and be the same browse you had.
Just a few hours to keep families from harm. Help us end home fires with Sound the Alarm.
Volunteer for a day to install free smoke alarms in your community.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
Hey, welcome back to Night Visions. You're starting our second hour. We're going to be talking about life after death. We have two guests that will be appearing tonight and talking about their own personal experiences. I know last week I mentioned, that we were going to be pursuing this topic, hopefully, multiple times, because it's something of just about everyone. It certainly affects everyone. There's no avoiding leaving this plane, as far as I can tell, as far as I've been able to figure out. And of course, those of us who've lost close loved ones, I think it's even more important. I used to worry about my own afterlife, and but then when I got older and lost a few people that were very near and dear to me, I began to worry about, well, where are they? Where did they go? Is there really life after death? Is there really a heaven? I need to know, because if this is no longer, we're not playing a game here. I really need to figure it out, especially after I lost my daughter, because that's the biggest deal any parent can ever go through. And I just really wanted to know. And I had been given a gift just before my daughter passed, because I was researching near-death experiences at the time and was getting ready to do a documentary on the subject for television. And in my research, I attended an IANS meeting. It's the International Association for Near-Death Experiencers here in Los Angeles, and listened to a circle of people, about 30 people, tell their stories about having died and then come back, and what they learned there. And almost to a person, it was like they didn't really want to come back because it was so wonderful there, but they came back because they had something else that they needed to do. They might have been concerned about children that they left behind, other reasons that they needed to come back. But it was with great reluctance, generally, I have found. And after I went to that meeting and heard all those wonderful stories, and it was very uplifting and hopeful, then a week later, my daughter suddenly passed away. And I really have to say that that meeting that I had attended was of great help to me. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible time regardless, but that did give me something to grasp onto. And it's, it was just amazing. It was an incredible gift. And I spoke with someone there from the group right after my daughter passed, and she talked to me for a long time, telling me more about her own experience. And it really was comforting. And I have a friend of about 10 years or so, maybe 12, that I met not too long after she had just a few years after she had her own near-death experience. She was actually in a boating accident and drowned, and was actually clinically dead for 28 minutes. And so I would like to bring her on now. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Lisa Reed. She's a holistic life counselor and a lifestyle consultant. And by the way, she went into that line of study and work after her near-death experience. So, hi, Lisa.
Hi there.
How are
Thanks
you?
for having me.
I'm
doing pretty good.
Good. So,
okay, great.
You met James earlier. So I'd love for you to share your experience, and then I'm going to ask you, what changed after that. But what exactly happened? I remember the story, but I don't remember all the details.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was Father's Day weekend in 2005 at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri.
Yay.
I was in a boating accident, and a boat ran over the boat that I was in, and basically kind cut our boat in half, and I was in part of the half that got kind of mangled. I luckily didn't. I didn't sustain a lot of physical damage per se, but
Right.
I was hit in the head with shrapnel and then drowned. So that was what I've been told, because I have no memory of that particular time, but I do remember just slightly leaving my body, I suppose. And I was with two angelic beings, and I say that because they didn't have wings, and they didn't necessarily have they weren't a male or a female, and they had kind of a beautiful Mediterranean skin and beautiful long hair. And they took me straight to this light. And from there, everything was light and beautiful. And I felt so amazing. It felt just amazing to not have any stress, not any worry. Because once we leave our body, obviously we don't have those things anymore. And I just felt that I was home. I was where I belonged. And I was told telepathy wise, because you don't have a mouth and you don't talk when you're there, but basically that it wasn't my time and I would come back, which I did. But I like so many others Renee mentioned, didn't necessarily want to. And I know that when I came back to my physical body, I felt like I was slammed into a coffin. It was like boom, but it really was my body.
Did you have the tunnel experience and the light, or did you just find yourself in another place?
I had the light. I just found myself. It was more of a very quick ascension. I guess it felt like an ascension, even though it could have been right next to where we were at.
Sure.
Physically in the physical world. I just remember that there was no sense of space or time. So people ask, how long do you think you were there? I could have been there for 40 years or 4 seconds or the entire 28 days I was gone. I don't know. Because we mentioned 28 minutes was what I was out, but I was also in a coma for 28 days. But most of the time it was medically induced.
Oh my
to keep my brain
goodness.
from swelling.
And so you say you sort of felt like you were going up, ascending. And when you ascended to this place, what did you see? What did it look like?
Mm-hmm. It looked like it was just like I felt like I was in a coliseum, kind of like a football stadium with everybody turning their lighter on. And that's how I felt the energy of the people that had passed, that I knew, that would be with me. And I felt just the energy of love, just total love from every being there. It was just very, very magical. It's iridescent in some way.
Yeah, you've got kids, and you've got parents, and so what that unconditional parental love is like. How does it compare with that feeling, the feeling that you have for your children? And how does that love feeling, is it the same, bigger, or is it different?
I feel like it is the love we all look for. It is like it would be kind of like what you'd have for your unconditional love for children. It was total acceptance and love. So yes, in that way, I'd say so. And it just was an amazing.
Yeah. Did you meet?
You were saying,
you said you saw the lights, and you knew that they were the other people that would be there to meet you. Did you actually have a meeting with anyone that you knew before, or a grandparent or someone that had passed away that you were aware of at the time, or did you just realize they were there?
I just felt their presence. And as far as being there, I felt like my conversation was always with the entire group because there wasn't a conversation per se. But I felt that I was there and I was being addressed by everyone all at one time. But I kind of contribute that back to the angelic beings that were there. But it wasn't them speaking. It was just knowledge that came to me, spoken from the collective. Because it wouldn't be spoken at all.
So yeah, they all, it's all telepathic, right?
Can you hear me? I have a bad connection. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right, honey. I know you're in Missouri. You're down there where I came from. You're in the rural area there.
Yeah.
But
definitely so.
In these communications that you were getting telepathically, were you getting messages, or was it all just feelings? I mean, did you learn anything? Did they give you any instructions for coming back or anything like that?
That basically I needed to come back and remind everyone that there's nothing to fear in life or in death. Fear is an illusion. And that works a little different because I found myself in more fearful things after I came back. So it's a lesson probably for myself as the years go on. I realized they were talking to me as much as anyone else.
Wow. That's amazing. And then once you regain consciousness after this coma, did you immediately remember everything?
No, yes and no. When I first woke up, the first thing that I said was, well, I couldn't, because everyone said, we thought you were going to die or something along that line. So I couldn't have died. I had to see my grandkids. Little did I know that a few years later I'd become a grandmother. And you don't have any idea of when that time would be. But
wow.
Yeah, so I guess that was my first words.
And I know, you were a wheeler dealer back in those days, and maybe still a little bit of a wheeler dealer and real estate mogul and all that. But you kind of changed course a little bit after, or maybe a lot after your near-death experience.
Yeah.
You went back to school. You obtained your doctorate degree.
Yes.
And your
yes,
holistic counseling and spiritual and all that stuff that you really weren't so much before. Did people notice?
Exactly. I was. Yeah, I mean, I was raised Catholic, and I believed in a certain way that I was taught through the Bible. And for instance, when I was a teenager, I had an abortion, and that was something I thought I would go to hell according to what I'd learned. Anyway, when I didn't. And I might as well just make a little statement right there. There is no place like hell. Hell is inside you. Hell is on this earth, and you can make yourself in hell, but as a destination, that doesn't really exist.
Sorry
and I'm certain of that one.
To just come in here, but I'm just listening.
However,
just listening.
It's I changed my. I want to know more, and I kept.
Sorry. I think we've got a delay going on here, James. What were you saying, James?
This reminds me so much of how the Cathars of southern France explained the nature of our reality. I mean, that's right. Hell being a construct.
It may be the delay from Missouri.
Right. It does remind me very much of that group, that were called heretics.
We go a little crazy here.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we have another experiencer, and it looks like he might be in studio now. And I would like to. Oh, there he is. It's Charles. Charles, I made you a full banner with your last name on it and everything. And I see we just have you on as Charles. But I'm going to introduce you anyway. Charles Smart is a retired machinist from Northeast Ohio. He worked at several other jobs after leaving Big Steel. He worked as a private investigator, a restaurant manager, and a host of other gigs. He's a father, a grandfather, a cancer survivor, a science fiction addict since the second grade. His hobbies include auto mechanics, carpentry, fixing, repairing, and trying to understand how everything works. And also a little bit of metaphysics to go in. Good to see you, Charles.
Yep. Good to meet you. Good to be able to come on the show with you and talk.
Thank you so much for joining us. And now, Lisa, Charles had a drowning experience as well when he was 8 years old. It was a little bit different than yours, and it was almost like like an abbreviated near-death experience, I guess you might say. So, Charles, what happened? You were swimming. You were 8 years old. Is that it?
Yeah, we'd gone swimming in a lake, and it had a drop off, and I really couldn't swim, but I was paddling around anyway, and I realized I was in too deep. I panicked and went under the water and couldn't make my way to the surface. After struggling down there in fear and panic and pain for a certain amount of time, I just popped out of my body. And I was peaceful. I was aware. Everything was clear. And I could see a pebble on the other side of the lake. If I pushed if I looked, I didn't look at it because I didn't have a body, but I could focus my awareness wherever I wanted to. It was like 360-degree vision all the time, like in super technicolor. And
I keep hearing that about the colors, about they're so brilliant and so amazing, and they're colors that we don't even have. I mean, can you describe that a little bit more? I keep trying to imagine it.
The only good simile that I've got is if you had a show back in the day that you watched that was a black and white show, and you'd always watched it in black and white, okay? And then suddenly someone showed you a full color version of that show, like in high def on a 52-inch screen,
Right.
That's kind of what it felt like.
It's like the lights just came on,
to the next step. Yes.
I remember the first time I ever saw a color TV. Now, so you know how old I am.
I was just thinking The Wizard of Oz. In The Wizard of Oz, like the first half of the movie is black and white.
Black and white.
And then it goes to the colorized color version. It really was kind of like that. Yeah.
And was there sort of a feeling like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what it's supposed to look like.
Well, it was how it was. There wasn't any doubt. There wasn't a hint of doubt.
The colors in a prism or iridescent colors are what I kind of think of.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Like kind of brilliant and almost lit.
That was the way. The other thing about how it felt was it felt whole. It felt as you mentioned, you had that feeling of belonging there.
Mm-hmm.
You had a feeling of wholeness. It's like, oh wow, this is the way this is the way I'm supposed to be. Okay. And my journey was very short, a few minutes. Okay. But it always
But did
struck
it seem
me.
like that?
Did
it
excuse
seem
me?
like it was only a few minutes?
No, it felt like it was a lot longer than it could have been in our time. Okay. Now but while I was floating there above the lake, I looked down and I could see my body still struggling in the water, and it just didn't matter to me anymore. I didn't feel scared for him. I didn't feel any empathy or compassion, or it was just there, and there was no emotional connection with my body at that point.
No attachment to it.
And as I was looking around, I saw a young woman sitting just up the beach talking to her boyfriend. And she turned in my direction. And apparently she noticed me struggling and called his attention. And as I'm watching this as it happens from up there, and he looked toward where I was, and then turned and ran away from me, above the beach, up the beach, higher on the beach. I thought, what the heck is he doing? Okay, so then he made a turn, came down, dived into the water, swam a few strokes, and got right to my body. And an instant before he touched me, I was drawn back into my body. It's like watching water go down the drain, and it's just like, and you're in, and it's not pleasant, because where I was before was really quite pleasant, but you're back in, and I had a message. It said, "Don't struggle, you'll drown you both." And I said, okay. And when he touched me, I just totally relaxed, and he got me back to, but when my feet hit the sand, I just collapsed. I didn't have anything. There was nothing left in me.
Yeah.
And I threw up, coughed quite a bit of water up. And I looked at him and said, not then. But after I'd recovered a while later, I went over to him and thanked him for saving me, and said, why did you turn and run up the beach? That didn't make any sense to me. He says, I needed the extra room to make the dive so I could get to you quicker. I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. The other thing about this is I didn't tell anybody about this probably until I was close to 50. Because
wow.
I mean, when it happened, I'd never heard of it before. I'd never heard of anything like this before. And I didn't really have the context to explain enough to share it. And who would believe me anyway, right? But as time went on, I started to hear similar stories, and there are a lot of commonalities in everybody's story. But it's like we're on this side, we're trying to explain something that's absolutely unexplainable. The feelings and the colors, it's not that we have something there, that we have something that we have experienced that just can't be put into words because it doesn't exist here.
And either one of you, it's like, I know that, I used to have a horrible fear, almost phobic about death. My fear kind of went away when I lost my daughter, because I thought, oh, well, she's already there. I'll just, when I go, I'll find her. But I've heard a lot of people say that, they lost any sense of fear about death.
Yes. Yes, that was true with me.
I'm not sure. Are we getting a bleed through in the audio, or is there some noise? Am I the only one hearing?
No, I can hear that. It's like a TV's on. And...
It's like a TV.
No, good year.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from. It feels like it's bleeding through or something. Every now and then it gets loud and then it goes quieter. It's weird. But anyhow, it's not us, folks. Somebody else. It's the ghosts in the machine. But anyhow, I know what I wanted to ask both of you.
That's right.
You said you felt like you left your body. I've heard a lot recently in my research, or I've read a lot about how a lot of people say they felt like they left through the top of their head. Did it feel that way to you, Charles, or?
Yes.
Lisa? Like you came up from the top of your head?
It did to me.
Okay.
Yes. I
don't
we
know.
can leave through our head,
really
through our feet, or through our heart. And I know I went through my...
Oh, wow. What'd you say, Charles, there? Sorry.
I can't say that I had had really thought about it. But I mean, if I do think about it, I felt like it was like I popped out of my chest, and not quite like the alien, but
right. Well, Lisa just said, it's either your head or your heart. So maybe you came from the heart area.
Yeah.
That's interesting to know. Yeah, not everyone says they come out of the top of the head, but I've been seeing that a lot lately, and I just wondered, what if that has any meaning or significance. But now I know Lisa, because I've known Lisa for a while, I know she had some big changes in her life following that experience. But since you were just a kid, you really weren't fully formed yet. You were still developing as who you were going to be. So it might be difficult to know, but did you feel any different? Did you feel like you had?
Did I feel different no.
Afterwards?
Yes, no. I felt so much bigger when I was over there, and when I came back, I had a lot of processing to do. But there were things that I knew because I felt it. I'd been there. I'd experienced it. That were no longer any doubts in my mind. And the biggest thing that I got out of it was that this physical body that we have is not us in our entirety. This is just a costume that we get to wear for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because in life, so often, we worry so much about our physical appearance and all that, and aging and how that changes the way we look and feel and everything. But from what I'm gathering, that's just not important at all. And you realize that once you've had that sort of enlightening experience. But James, didn't you have some kind of an experience similar to a near death?
I've been close to death on quite a few
occasions. I think I've been around one or two of those.
I think the last time I had sepsis, and I don't remember being in hospital, but I certainly coming back and sort of more reinforced view that I'm not frightened of death. That fear of death completely went, and yeah, it's one of those that I don't know. You just sort of enjoy living a little, realizing that the sort of petty things that we get so wound up about. There's just a lot more that sort of unifies us. I mean, I've had. I remember when I was about 7 or 8 and lost a hell of a lot of blood due to an issue with my nose, an arterial nosebleed, and I suppose I suppose it's not like light at the end of the tunnel or anything, but I just remember feeling so warm. I remember feeling the cold of the emergency room, as you would call it. I remember it being very clinical, very cold. My mum, being absolutely fraught with panic, and I remember the voice from the operating surgeons. I'd lost, I think, I had something like 3 or 4 pints of blood left. It was really quite horrendous, which especially when you're littles, it's not good. But I just remember them saying, "You need to stay awake. You need to stay awake," and me really not wanting to. It felt so much more like being absolutely frozen cold, and then being wrapped in a very warm covering blanket. Cozy. That feeling. I suppose when I have, and I don't speak about this too often, but it's the feeling of a cold winter's day when you've got to get up for work. That it's too cozy, and that was.
Oh yeah, that feels so good.
That was what it was like. Now, I do remember, when whether or not she said this is another thing. I'm absolutely certain she was like, "James, you need to stay awake," and that was my sort of grasp on this reality, if you will. I do remember that warmness going and it being replaced with absolute pain. They were operating. There's no anaesthetic when you're in that situation, so it went from a very warm feeling to me coming back into my body, if you want to look at it like that, and there being a lot of pain. I mean, a hell of a lot.
And this was, how old were you?
I'd been about 7 or 8 years old.
Because again, I mean, that happened at such an early stage that it would be kind of difficult to tell what effect that it had, because you didn't really know how you were going to turn out yet anyway. But knowing you as I do, knowing how you are always in service, you're always working to help other people, I wonder if you would have been that same way had you not had those sort of touches with the other side.
Well, paths that are not taken. It's death is. I've had what I call a year of death. Lost my grandma, uncle, grandma. I lost 3 very close friends. I lost my best friend, and on top of that, dealing with my own health. It goes like this. I mean, enjoy yourself. It's later than you think, but not irresponsibly. But our attitude to death in the West is seemingly one that is designed to terrify us. That our approach is it's something to be fearful of, as opposed to what many other cultures do, which is celebrate. Celebrate life. It's not death that we need to fear. It's the celebration of life. Well, service to others, it shouldn't be that unusual. On this, Renee, it took me quite a while to figure out that not everyone else thought like that. I assumed that.
It happened so early in your life that that's just how you developed.
Yes.
As a person, because you're only 7 or 8, like Charles was. So with Lisa, she was already a young adult, and so she had already started carving out her path in life, involved in business, education, and doing relationships and all this stuff. So it was easier to see sort of that demarcation of when things changed. But it happening so early on, that's just how you developed, was as a part of that experience. Does that sound fair, James, or not?
Yeah.
So I'm just aware there's a slight delay.
What's that?
I'm just aware there's a slight delay with Lisa, so I don't want to overspeak.
I know, it's so hard not to step all over poor
I'm
Lisa.
so sorry.
No, it's not your fault. We'll blame the technology. We'll blame Missouri this time.
Well, with me, I do have there's a before and after for me.
Yes.
Where both of you guys may have just kind of grown into and probably helped you in so many ways. With me, there was the Lisa before and the Lisa now.
Lisa, did your family notice the difference? Or your friends?
Oh, yes. Yeah, everyone, definitely. Most people say they like me better now. They liked me before, but I was always in a hurry.
Really?
Now I take my time.
Be in a slow hurry. Do you know, Renee, you've just triggered my mind to something, because it was only about 3 or 4 years ago I was in emergency isolation, sepsis, failing organs, in something that would shape my life medically. Huge event for me, but I don't think it shaped anything for me. I mean, I don't think there was medically there was. I have to take lots of tablets and injections and all of this each day, but spiritually, I suppose, I don't recall there being too much of a change. So maybe that experience
you'd already made the change because you had those earlier experiences, or at least at that early age.
James, from my own experiences, I can say this. Maybe it was a reminder to get on the stick, to get things done, because I put my experiences behind me for over 50 years, and I had a couple of experiences after that really shook me up and made me start looking at this side of the universe rather than differently. Okay. And those add so much, because I put it all aside and just kept going in the physical, mundane, working that map. Okay. Now I'm trying very hard to put together a different map that includes all of that, the other side and our side.
It's really interesting, that, Charles, because my motto in life is Goya, which get off your In other words, go do things. It's very difficult. I'm not someone who likes to sit around for too long.
No, you're not. But I wonder, Charles, you said you had a couple of other experiences. Were those like near-death experiences or paranormal experiences? What do you think about that?
There were paranormal aspects to those experiences. But, one of them, I got picked up along the road. I was hitchhiking. And I had an interesting conversation, which the words of it I can't remember. And I got from one place to the other place. And when I got into that vehicle, and it appeared to be just an ordinary vehicle. I mean, there were some special things about it, but it appeared to be an ordinary vehicle. And I can only remember bits and pieces of the conversation I had with the gentleman that was driving. And when I got out of the car, I was healed inside.
Do you think that was something special about that man or about the whole deal? Do you feel like what do you think was going on there?
I think someone or something from the other side said, no, you're not going, it's not going to end like this. This is the way you have other things to do.
And when you say you were healed, did you have physical things that needed to be healed, or was it more of a healing of the soul or the spirit, or what do you mean by healed?
I was in a terribly lost and depressed period of my life. And when I got out, I had hope again. Wow. It's really that simple. Hope. It makes all the difference.
Wow. And did you feel like that man had something to do with it?
I interpret it that way.
Wow. What kind of a car was he driving?
Do you remember Starsky and Hutch?
Yes.
That red Ford Torino with the white stripe on it?
Yep.
That's what he was driving. That exact car that had to have been 35 years old at that time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Beautiful, perfect. And that's part of the hint, I guess. It was a perfect concours, beautiful car.
Wow.
Riding along a back Ohio country road in a snowstorm.
That is wild. What were you doing walking in a snowstorm?
I had someplace felt I needed to be.
Yeah, I guess it's a good thing you did, because
yeah,
you got a little gift along the way there, or a big gift.
I did.
But so, Lisa, when you after you came out of your coma, and people began to notice that you had changed in some ways, and you had noticed it too. Did you find that you lost interest in some things? It was no longer as important.
Yes.
And then other things sort of came forward for you?
Yes. Definitely. I was not as worried about making money and the things that really ran me. I felt that I was no longer a real estate broker was not the first thing you thought about me. I was actually a soul, not a real estate broker.
Oh, wow.
I also had an interesting thing happen kind of like Charles, a little different though. In 2019, right before COVID hit, I got in a car accident. It was my fault. I pulled out in front of a car and it hit me, just T-boned me. And as I saw those lights, it was nighttime. It was raining really hard. And I saw the lights and I just thought to myself, okay, God, I guess it's my time. And I just kind of laid back and they hit me. And I mean, for a minute I was gone. I just thought for sure this is my time. As you see those lights coming, because it was a truck and it hit me. And I actually, the car, it really, smashed in my car. And I mean, I don't know how they didn't need the jaws of life to get me out of that car, but a guy came up and helped me get out before the ambulance was there. Or not get out, but get out of my seat. Because when you see the pictures of the car, it's like there's probably about 20 inches of car seat there, and there's a good 40 inches of me. And yet it broke my hip and a few ribs, but it could have been a lot worse than that. But it was so funny how I just surrendered. I just surrendered to it. I said, okay, guess it's my time.
Did you feel terrified?
And
or did you just say, okay?
I didn't know. I felt very peaceful. But I realized that I feel like that was a warning to me to slow down my life once again and take priority and look at things. And here I am back in Missouri, close to my family.
Yeah. Well,
some of us take a little bit of extra persuading.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I've always called Lisa an earth angel. Some years back, not long after we met, really, not that long, I got like emergency custody of my granddaughter. And I had just moved into a house from a tiny little cottage. So, and it was my first night at the house, same house I'm sitting in now. And that night, the first night I got here, I got a call from my granddaughter. It was an emergency situation, and I had to go rescue her from an abusive situation. And from that moment forward, she's been with me, and ended up getting legal custody and everything. But I mean, she came that night. I only had one bed that hadn't even been put up yet. So I pulled the mattress down and gave that to her, and I slept on the couch. And I mean, there was nothing, hardly anything in this house because I'd moved from this tiny place, and it was that first day. And next thing I know, here comes Lisa driving up in a truck, a big shiny truck, and she's got it full of stuff. There was a bedroom set for my granddaughter, a bed and a dresser. There was a washer and a dryer. There was all kinds of linens and things like that. And I thought, oh my gosh. So we girls unloaded those things, and then we had one guy to help us install the washer and dryer, but we ended up pushing him out of the way because we felt like we knew better, and we did, because he couldn't get it in wedged in, and we did. But that was just such a wonderful gift and blessing, Lisa. And as I told you, every time I talk to you, I say, every time I do my laundry, I think of Lisa, and I send up a little thank you prayer.
Is that a compliment or an insult, Renee?
It could go either way, but believe me, it's a compliment because it's like I'm not going to the laundromat. I'm right in my own little utility room in off my kitchen, and it's very convenient. And having a child again, starting again, raising another family, it was all very much needed, but totally unexpected, but so appreciated. But that's the kind of person you became. after your, I mean, I don't know what you were like before because I didn't know you, but certainly I know that since that experience, you've just been really wonderful that way. Very giving and kind.
Well,
She's
I just feel that I feel like that day that all came together kind of like just amazing because the deal I got on that washer and dryer you'll never believe. So it was almost like your angels were around going here, you know.
That is so
I couldn't
wonderful.
imagine having a child without a washer and dryer.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was just so wonderful, and we had nothing, you know, at that time, and she just came in and saved the day for us. I didn't have to do a thing. But yeah, those are the kind of things I think about when I think about Lisa. So, and I know, you know, I think sometimes, and James, you and I have talked about this before, is you know, a near-death experience seems to be sort of the best example of people having that sort of a change, of a shift in their direction or the way they approach life. But there are other things too. I think that, you know, like sometimes, like for instance, when we talk about the death of my daughter, it was horrible, horrible, horrible. But I do feel that I was given some gifts after that. I feel like I'm a better person after it. I feel like I'm more empathetic and sympathetic to other people's problems, you know, and other people's lives and what they might be going through. And I'm very sensitive to that now in a way that I wasn't before. It's like, you know, that saying, I think it was Rumi, I'm not sure, that said, be kind, always be kind, because everyone is fighting a battle. And that really hits home to me because I know it's like, you know, you may go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and you've got this woman waiting on you. She hates her job and, you know, all that stuff. But, you know, and she's not the most friendly, but, you know, I always try to engage people and give them a smile, a compliment if I can, or something like that. And you can see them change, you know, immediately, because it's like, I now am aware that, gosh, I don't know what's going on in that lady's life. She could have just lost her husband. She could have just lost her child. You know, she might have cancer. You know, you just don't know what people are going through. And I feel like because of the trauma that I went through and felt that kind of pain myself, it changed me and made me more aware of other people in what they might be going through. James, do you know what I mean by that? I think we've talked about things that can cause you to just have a shift in consciousness or a shift in your life.
Well, if we're, you know, if we're talking about, you know, just death experiences, it's, you know, we're here living and being reminded, you know, we don't get out of this game alive. But having that closeness to it all ending will change your priorities in life. However you wish to interpret or access what happened, you know, as the instant that you and history is littered with examples of this. You know, this you know, you're close to the end, and then you get that second breath, or you come back, or you know, whatever. Then, well, how can I put it? It could be very well, you know, quite literally, old Lisa died, new Lisa is here. It could be that, you know, it's interesting. Money seems to be a key thing with people who've come back. Now, it doesn't matter. It's an empty pursuit for more and more and more. How about helping others and what have you? And that absolutely is the theme. And I suppose when you've come, you know, for a lot of people, dying alone is truly terrifying. You know, But if you've experienced that or come close to it, then I suppose, the only thing left to do is to help others face that. And it is, last week we were talking about stigmas in terms of things like addictions and all of that. There'll be, people who really don't like talking about this. This is perhaps another stigma that needs to go away. And the more people talk about it, what's interesting is the more people who've had very similar experiences, it's just they keep quiet because some institute or someone will come down on them and like a ton of bricks as if they're making it up. If the experience leads to you being a better person, then surely that stigma needs to disappear.
Absolutely.
The pathway to a better society. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it almost to a person, a near-death experience was the most positive thing that's ever happened to them. I have to say this, I keep smiling. If you're wondering what I keep grinning about, Maureen in the chat room says, everybody needs a Lisa. Do you want to be my friend, Lisa? Cute.
Sure. I'm always looking for friends.
That's right. Speaking of which, Lisa, I know you're doing counseling and that sort of thing. Do you want to give us are you taking clients, or do you have a contact information? How can people reach you if they would like to speak?
I actually okay. Well, I could give you basically, I don't have any real since I moved and stuff. I really don't have anything set up yet because I've only been here a few months. But
what about
let me
email?
think, what would be the best way? Email, perfect. Yeah. The number 4 and my name, Lisa Reed @gmail.com, and I spell my last name REED. So Lisa.
So it's
Reed
just Lisa Reed @gmail.com. Oh, I'm surprised you got that.
It starts with the number 4.
Oh,
no, it's number 4 in my name.
4 Lisa Reed @gmail.com. So the number 4 Lisa Reed REED. That's great.
Or you can contact info @newrennies.org if you didn't catch that email address.
That's right, and we can put you in touch. And Charles, thank you so much for agreeing to let us drag you on with us tonight. It was so wonderful, so good to meet you.
Glad to be here.
And Lisa, I'll be in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
For more Night
nice
Vision.
to see all of you.
Take care, everyone.